This is the beginning of a cabinet, maybe a whiskey cabinet, just a little storage cabinet in Krenov-style. And these are the doors I'm making via coopering. It means it has a curve in it. And those are going to be the front panel doors for a Krenov-style cabinet. And so this is the board I'm using to have the sides, bottom, and the top, waist, and side marked for this cabinet.
I begin by taking 6 pieces of white oak, and the coopering effect is arrived at by cutting the edges at a 4-degree angle, so each joint is 8 degrees, and that makes this nice curved arch in my door panels. So the convex side is achieved by just putting tape on the joints and open it up for glue and just have tape serve as my clamps.
Okay, so here is the glued up panel. You can see on the back side here we have a number of straps of tape that are holding that, and the coopering effect is just that. It's just standing on its own now with the tape holding it. So I'm creating a piece to hold this. So when I turn it over and put it down to where I can plane this or sand it or mold it, I'll have a little brace piece for it to sit on. So I'm gonna make 2 of these. So first one's done. I'll trace the other one out on this, and now I'll cut it out. Cooper front panels, I built this support system to hold it. So this is just a little piece of MDF board here and a couple stands so I can plane the top of this. Let me show you how it works.
So the frame allows me to push my sharp plane across this to start the rounding over of the arc on my door panels.
So now I have my platform built. It allows me to push down on this, hold it with one hand and plane it with the other.
Now on to breaking down my stock to usable sizes for cutting the lumber into sections that are rough sizes for each of the parts that I'm going to use for my cabinet.
Now we'll take these boards and joint them, plane them to thickness before we actually cut them to the dimension we'll use.
Because this panel is too big to fit on my planer, particularly the joiner, it was easier just to get out the hand plane and do a little smoothing on it. We'll sand it smooth if it needs anything other than that. So what I'm working on right now is the inside part of it.
So here's the back panel, and this is what the side will look like. And there's the front. You can see the curve. That's the inside of it. You can see how that front doors curve. It'll be split in the middle here, and you'll have 2 doors opening out. To get a straight edge on my arc, I've clamped this down here and marked that right there where it ought to be. So I can get one straight edge, and then I can cut the other one on a table saw. We'll see how this works.
In this step, I'm cutting the door panels ends square to what's going to be the sides of the cabinet. This was a lot easier than it looked, first one side and then the other.
So after I sawed this flush to the sides, now I got to clean this up. So I'm going to get a hand plane. So I put it in my Rubo workbench and clamped it up like that. And we'll attempt to run a hand plane across the top of it.
Now I'm just trimming the top and the bottom parallel to each other and make sure they're square to the sides. Again, hold this steady and just rock it back and forth as it goes through the blade.
So the trick in making that cut on the table saw with the fence is to be able to get the bottom and the top exactly the same size, because we're going to end up cutting this down the middle to make 2 doors. And so now we know that they're exactly the same size. We can proceed with the next and final cut, which is to split it in half. So I have this on a sled. I have my end piece here, which is the bottom curve, screwed to this front part of the fence, and it is lapped into here so it won't rock left or right. And then I have it wedged into the back part of the fence so it won't move left or right or up or down. So it's nice and sturdy. So now we're going to attempt to cut this guy right down the middle. Okay, so here's my front panel after I made the cut. So there we go.
In this glue up, I used the Titebond Quick and Thick, primarily because it dries clear, and I didn't want to have to do a whole lot of additional sanding after squeeze outs on this.
So this is a glue up of our trim on the edge of our panels. So I have just a very little lip here, and I'll use the flush trim router bit to cut that off. So this is my spiral bit. So we'll see if I can do a better job.
This is a good example of why not to use an old and dirty router bit, because after I trimmed this, you can see it left track marks that I'm going to have to try to sand out. That was not fun, so this bit was thrown in the garbage shortly thereafter.
Are not the same height. You can see we have a little bit of refraction. I think the issue came when I cut these 1/4 inch top pieces on 2 different band saws.
My joinery is going to be dowels because I have to assemble this with the doors in place.
So I started off by putting 2 holes in here and dowel points, and then matching these up, and then I did this one and then tried to match that up. I got that off center, and I even tried to drill a second hole and could not get it centered first, so I had to drill a new hole into here, and I used it with my dowel wizard to get this straight. I put the dowel point in that hole to be able to get that one, so that was my mistake. Need to drill them into here first, then come back and put them in the board here. They'll match up a lot easier. So I have the dowel points in the holes. I've pre-drilled these holes already. And so this piece is going to go outside. So I'm going to line this up with the holes in the board and hit it to drive these points in so I know where to drill the receiving holes. Have this block back here so I can make sure my area, this is flush this way. So we created our dimples in our board. That's where we drill our receiving holes. The tape is here to designate the stopping point because that's the depth I'm drilling in this shallow hole. That's all the depth I need for this. All right, here's a mistake I made. So I wanted this side to be outside, but when I had my dowel pins in here, I put this side on the outside and marked it that way so that would fit, and it does fit, but that's not the side that I want to be out. So now I have to re-drill, be able to get this to fit with this going outside. Okay, for my cabinet now I have my 2 sides in, and they're in the bottom. I have dowel joinery in here. My back will go in here, recessed in just enough so we have a French cleat on the back, and we'll have joinery connecting the sides to the back. So here's the challenge on this cabinet. The sequence of how you assemble this, and so the bottom piece,
yada yada yada. This was just a long explanation of how you have to have a sequence of events right to put this cabinet together. It was a minute long. I edited it out. It was just too much.
this is the fun part and the challenging part about designing something like this, one of a kind. So my original thought was I would cut the bottom and the top to match the curve of this up here and then loop it out to here. So I made a French curve. So I've had a couple sample pieces of this curve that I put on top and bottom, and it didn't do the trick. What happened was this curve stole the thunder from the main primary piece of this curved front panel doors. So I'm going back to making a square corner and square top like this, and that way this curve gets the spotlight. It's the key in design, is try something, see how it looks, do a mock-up, and if you like it better, go with it. If it doesn't, go back to your original plan. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bevel on the bottom of this top, and then I'm going to do a bevel on the top of the bottom. So the bevels will lead you into the design. So the same thing, ends in front, the bevels will be coming into the piece. And so I'll do a mock-up on that just to confirm that that's a good idea as well. Okay, here is the cabinet with the round edge on the vertical side, and it's square on that side. So I like that. So we have the curve here, and yet it's flat over there. And put the curved piece up top. That still looks nice, because as you approach it from this side, this curve is here. The bottom will match that. So I'm liking that. I'm thinking that's going to be an enhancement that we're going to keep. French cleat will fit right there. It'll look something like that. All right, so we're going to dry fit the top on. We got all our dowel joinery, and our matching holes over here. And there we go. All right, now we're getting into the difficult part of the build, and that's fitting the panel doors into the carcass. And you can see I have a little bit of a gap here, but it's extremely tight down in that left corner. And then just opposite over here, I got a little bit of gap there, and it's too tight up there. So the question is my cabinet out of square, or is my drawer panel not square? We got to figure this out.
So can you see this square?
No, I would say right there.
I don't know if you need to, because you're looking at this line, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be good, so I'll focus on this then. But you can see this line.
Yep. Am I good?
No, we need to go that way.
More or less?
Oh, right there.
Oh, that looks good. Hot dog. Okay, so to fix the area where we were tight, upper right and upper left, we basically torqued our cabinet box this way to pull this to rack it, and that made these sides fit square. So the trick in that is being able to glue it up back in that configuration so it'll come back to that exact position. So this is the back, so this one here, so this guy will need to fit in and go all the way down past that little line. So we want to glue this guy in. So what we're going to do is put a little glue in our hole. We're going to put a dab of glue on here, and we're going to spin this guy around with our special glue spreader, which I have 8 of these. And so then we put that guy in the hole and we tap it down just below those lines, and then we kind of wipe up any excess glue, because this is being glued in permanent now, and our top piece will have to be dry fitted before we get to the right stage. I pre-finished all this, and now I have my doors that has these pins that are hinges. And so now comes a time where I have to cut these brass pins to the actual length. So I've measured the width or depth of the drawers plus the holes I have on the top of my doors. Now we're going to cut them. I have this marked with a line right here on the black that I need to cut off that amount.
This is easy work with a cutoff wheel and your Dremel tool. Just so put it on there and just hold it steady, and it'll take a few seconds and it'll cut it right off.
So I'm trying to produce this round head like this one.
I bought some stock brass dowels, and I wanted to make these pins for a decorative feature and for the hinges. And so I cut them into size, and now I'm just rounding over the edge to get a nice round point on each one.
Now I've put it in my drill, and I'm going to hold my sandpaper up to this. We'll start with 320 and then go to a soft sanding disc.
Once I have rounded over my pins that are used as hinges that'll be used in the glue up, I can finally glue up my cabinet. And so this is a task that requires assembly of everything glued up, and remember to rack the cabinet to the right so the doors will swing properly.
I elected to do pocket hole screws for joinery of the back to the sides. This piece here is where my French cleat will go. It'll hide 2 of them, the bottom 2 down here will be visible.
While the whiskey cabinet looks good, but with the bottles and glasses in it, it just didn't feel right or look right. It needed something else to make it pop. So to make it pop in traditional Krenov-style, you need to add some internal shelving and 2 drawers or boxes. So here it is.
So here are my layout plans for the inside of the box. And I wanted to put a small little box here, and below the shelf, put another little box in here. So they were 5 inches wide, and they're only going to be 3.5 inches deep coming out. But when I actually mapped it out inside my cabinet, it didn't work out that way. It didn't look right for it to be below this, because it basically had this thing coming down 5 inches, and that was too close to here. So I elected to put it above here. There'll be enough room for 2 glasses over here, and maybe 3 or 4 depending on the size here. You build enough projects, occasionally you make a mistake. So let me show you what happened. So I cut these 2 pieces out of the same wood that I have here, and got them milled down to somewhere around 3/8 of an inch for my little drawers that are going to go in here and here. And so while this was a good fit for this one, it's way too small for that one. And then this thing in its head, it's a 1/2 inch too small. All we're going to do to fix this is we're going to shorten this top so it'll fit better and make that the drawer front to the right size. That's an easy solution this time around. Here we go. Here's a look at our cabinet. Got our little boxes taped up and in their places, so they look good. So all we have to do is put brass handles on our boxes and brass handle on our doors. Now we have a little stop up here that we've added so the doors won't swing in any further. So I have this straight edge board with a T that I glue on. I measured it for squareness, and I'm gonna rest my drill bit right in here in the corner, something like this. The tape is the depth, the max depth that I wanna go.